I think a big part was the demystification, kind of opening your eyes to what this really is and what you really need to do to overcome it. And like, you did it.
Yeah, what was given to me at Communicamp was just like, wow, I can use everything that I've learned here going forward. And I think that's exactly what happened. So I'm so grateful for everything that I went through at Communicamp.
Welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Words, a Selective Mutism podcast hosted by the Smart Center, produced and published by New Edition Productions. This episode features our latest installment of our Shining Stars series, where we sit down with former Smart Center patients or their parents and discuss how they overcame selective mutism. Today, we meet former Smart Center patient Nick Jones. Many of you guys already know Nick. He is one of the Smart Center's most vocal and articulate former patients. He's documented his journey with SM incredibly well on his YouTube page, Smack Talk, which you should all go check out if you haven't already. Nick's battle with selective mutism began when he was just 2 years old after a car accident. In that moment, Nick's parents noticed that he was extremely shy. He was avoiding eye contact, turning away from, or physically hiding from others. Fast forward nearly 20 years, and Nick is a thriving college student who is now much more comfortable and at ease in social situations. Nick and his story serve as a true inspiration for others fighting their own battle with selective mutism. And if you're unfamiliar with Nick's story, I can't wait for you to hear this episode. In this episode, Dr. E and Nick discuss how Nick overcame selective mutism, how he approaches social interactions today, the importance of small wins, and much, much more. Before we get started, if you have any questions on anything you hear in today's episode with Dr. E and Nick, please head to our website, selectivemutismcenter.org/ask Dr. E, that's ASKDRE, and enter your question in the form. We read all of your submissions and we do our best to answer them on upcoming podcast episodes, blog posts, and on social media. And speaking of social media, for the best of this episode and every episode of Unspoken Words, make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram and on YouTube. On Instagram, we are at UnspokenWords_podcast, and we are Unspoken Words Podcast by Dr. E on YouTube. All right, without further ado, please enjoy the latest episode of Unspoken Words.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. E. Before we get started with today's episode, I have something really exciting to share with you. On Friday, April 4th, 2025, we'll be hosting our all-day Selective Mutism in the School virtual conference offering 6.5 continuing education credits for professionals attending. We've put together an incredible lineup of selective mutism experts and will discuss the assessment, development of accommodations, interventions, and strategies to help the child and teen with selective mutism, social anxiety, and shyness speak in school. So mark your calendar, April 4th, and if you're a parent, be sure to share this opportunity with your child's school staff, doctor, therapist, so they too can attend. Registration details can be found on our website, www.selectivemutismcenter.org, and in the description of this podcast episode. Together, we can create a world where every child has a voice. Now, enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners. It's Dr. E, and I am honored to be here with Nick Jones, one of our amazing shining stars. How are you, Nick?
Hey, good morning. I'm good. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to be here, for you to be here. I'm excited to be here, but I'm excited for you to be here because we've been wanting you to come on this podcast for a while, and you're just so busy now with your life. What are you doing?
Yeah. So I am a second-year college student. I'm at NC State University in Raleigh. And yeah, like you said, I've been busy. I'm majoring in mechanical engineering. So as you can imagine, classes and just everything is always nonstop. I'm always on the go. So I'm staying busy. I'm involved in a college ministry that's affiliated with my church in Raleigh. So I'm very plugged in and just always with people, hanging out with people. And yeah, I'm fully verbal at college. So it's been amazing the past year and a half, just talking to everyone, whether it's people in class, like my close friends there, professors, you name it. I'm talking to everyone. So it's been amazing.
Well, that is music to my ears, of course. One of the wonderful reasons that I wanted you here was that sometimes you'll get a teen or an adult that's been struggling their whole life, and they overcame it when they were young. And so now here they are as a teenager and adult sharing their story, which is amazing. But with you, you were struggling most of your life into your teen years.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed at a young age. I was probably 4 or 5 years old when I was diagnosed with selective mutism. And pretty much all throughout elementary, middle, and high school, I struggled pretty highly with selective mutism in school and outside of school. So I was diagnosed a couple years after my family was in a traumatic car accident. But for pretty much my entire life leading up to college almost, I had only really communicated with most people, whether it was on my phone or through a whiteboard, but non-verbally.
So I think it was a couple years ago, 2021 November, right? That you attended Communicamp.
Yeah, it was that fall, I remember.
That was the first time we got to meet you, and you came to Communicamp mute. And at the end of Communicamp, what happened by the end?
At the end of it, my mind was just like so full with resources and tools that I didn't even know what to think, but I felt more confident going out of it because I had obviously the resources and everything I needed to take that next step. And that just propelled me to make all the progress that I was going to make following that.
Yeah, I remember at camp meeting you, and you had used the RSA, the ritual sound approach with Dr. Jenna, and progressed into speech. And I remember when you were leaving and you were standing at the gym door with your mom, and I was just so proud of you for how hard you worked at camp, and you found your voice. But I know it stands out, and I didn't realize at the time that I would affect you that way, but I called you a rock star. And you loved that.
Yeah, I remembered that. I kept that with me throughout all of my journey. I would always think back to camp in that moment, just of meeting you and you calling me a rock star. And I used that sort of as fuel to my fire. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that later, and I didn't realize how impactful that would be to you, but you really worked so hard. You know, you wanted this and you worked at it and you did it, and you did it amazingly with grace, and you believed you could. And so here's a question for you, because we've never really had this conversation. So I'm eager to kind of get these answers from you. What was it about Communicamp that made the difference for you?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I saw during Communicamp was that there are other people just like me. And I had sort of thought about that for years leading up to going to Communicamp, but I had never really been in a place so intentionally focused on like treating selective mutism with so many other people who are just like me going through the same things that I was going through. So I think Communicamp really opened my eyes to the idea that, hey, like I'm not alone in this, and we're all sort of like trying to reach a common goal here.
And the tools for you, knowing the social communication bridge and being either mute or verbal, that transitional stage of helping you transition from nonverbal to verbal, because you were pretty comfortable. And that's what I explained with SM. Sometimes you have to realize that someone's comfortable doesn't mean they're going to just speak. And you needed the skills and the tools to progress from nonverbal to verbal. That's where the RSA, the ritual sound approach, came into play, shaping sounds into words. And that's what did it for you. So I think a big part was the demystification, kind of opening your eyes to what this really is and what you really need to do to overcome it. And like, you did it.
Yeah. And I think all of what was given to me at Communicamp was just like putting my foot in the door of like, wow, I can use everything that I've learned here going forward. And I think that's exactly what happened. So I'm so grateful for everything that was given to me, everything that I went through at Communicamp, because it sort of helped me kind of jumpstart like my fast-paced progress that was to come.
Yeah, no, you did amazing. And a lot of our followers just love you. They loved you love your Instagram account, and we'll put that in the notes, because you have an Instagram and you talked about your experience with SM and overcoming it. So it's beautiful because You really are such an inspiration to so many. And what we tell people is, yeah, whether you're 3 or you're 15 or you're 25, we can help you reach your capacity. And you did it. Now you're thriving. So tell me what it's like socially right now for you.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I am fully verbal at college. It's become like who I am. It's become my way of life to just be verbal, just because it's been a couple of years since I've kind of reached the point of being like fully verbal with strangers and all of that. So when I came to college last year as a freshman, I made it a huge goal of mine to just start talking to people once I got onto campus. And I shared this a little bit in my YouTube channel, Instagram account, but long story short, once I got there, I just started talking to people and I never really looked back from there. But I sort of made the most progress like summer of 2022 and leading up to that summer. So going into that summer of 2022 was when I really started talking to strangers, and I would practice going to stores and just going to restaurants and ordering food, asking questions to employees, things like that, just small exposure practice instances. And I think that really helped me kind of get that experience of like talking to people in everyday life. And I think that just snowballed over and over again. And it came to the point where I was just so comfortable talking to strangers that it was just second nature at that point. So yeah, once I got to college, it was natural. So I've never really looked back since then.
I was going to say, it sounds like you've never looked back, that you've really been able to do it. So here's a question that some people ask is, now that you've overcome SM, are there any struggles that you have at all in terms of kind of social communication at all? Do you feel you found your voice, you're done, you just don't look back, like you said? Are there areas or times that you feel that kind of anxiety come back at all?
Yeah, for sure. I still have a ways to go in fully overcoming selective mutism. There are many people back home who I still don't talk to, who I'm still not verbal with, who I'm still like good friends with, and I'll see them when I'm back home for breaks. I'll hang out with friends who I am not verbal with when I'm back home. So I think when I'm off on my own out in Raleigh or wherever, I am fully verbal, but back home there's still plenty of people who I'm just not at that point yet. So there's definitely still some anxiety and I guess a little bit of tension, just not being fully verbal with everyone yet. But at the same time, I am definitely content with where I'm at, in the sense that I've sort of started my own independent life out at college. So I'm not as worried about talking to some of these people back home as I probably would have been a couple years ago, just because I don't necessarily see them all that often.
So how often did you use the RSA when you left camp? Did you use it much at all?
Yeah, I used it a little bit in the months that were following camp. I used it to start talking to a couple of my close friends back home, and we would sort of go through different words, and I would just be in a one-on-one setting with some of my friends, and we would use the RSA approach, and I would just kind of use that sort of as a launching pad to use a couple other methods to start talking to them.
Yeah, I mean, the RSA was just so powerful for you and so many. I just remember that at camp. And I remember thinking that was a great strategy for you to, like you said, launch you to kind of bridge you from nonverbal to verbal. And as much as people go, oh, shaping sounds into words, like, why would a teenager do that? It's a cognitive approach, and it helped you rethink about sounds and words rather than speaking, which was a fear. So as far as your career now, you basically have the rest of your life ahead of you. You can live your dreams and do what you need to do in mechanical engineering. Very, very impressive, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. It's incredible to think about how far I've come and, how much life I have ahead of me of being verbal. It's amazing.
Hey listeners, we'll get back to the episode in a second. I want to tell you about Communicamp, our popular 3+ day intensive group treatment and all-day
parent education and support program designed to help parents, children, and teens overcome selective mutism, social anxiety, and extreme shyness. Over 3+ action-packed days, your child or teen will engage in immersive activities guided by expert clinicians that build confidence and communication skills in a supportive, fun, and collaborative environment. Spaces are limited and spots book up fast. To learn more, please find Communicamp in this episode's description or head to communicamp.org and complete our interest form, and our team will be in touch. Let's help your child or teen find their voice at Communicamp. Let's get back to the episode.
So, Nick, as far as advice to teens struggling with SM, they haven't had a successful experience yet in being able to find their voice. They're pretty stuck. What is your advice to them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give is that you're not alone. And coming from me, I've been exactly where you're at, feeling very lost, very almost hopeless in the sense that I wasn't sure if I would ever overcome selective mutism, but that it is possible. I think a big piece of advice that helped me in my journey was to take it one step at a time. And if there is a goal that you're trying to reach and it seems even too far out there, break that down into smaller goals to ultimately reach that bigger goal. I think that was a huge piece that helped me in my journey. My therapist called it the ladder. So I had different sets of goals along this ladder that I would try to get to, whether it was going to a store and asking an employee a question, or going to 3 stores, or sending a video of me talking to a friend. Like if something seemed too far up that ladder, we'd break things down into smaller little goals. And I would kind of work my way up that ladder, just stepping along those rungs of the ladder to reach those bigger goals. So definitely just take it one little step at a time.
So it's interesting you say that. I see it as a bridge a lot because it's the steps on the bridge, which is very similar to the ladder. But that advice is great for parents, because one of the things, Nick, that I see happen a lot with families just starting at the Smart Center or calling us is that they want to go from like 0 to 100. I want my child to talk in school. I want my child to say hi and bye to their aunts and uncles. I want my child to say thank you. I want my child to talk to their friends. That is just such a big goal so quickly. And what ends up happening if you're trying, and I'd love you to touch on this, when your goals are too big, they're just not ready for it. It ends up creating more anxiety and avoidance. And I think that's where the hopelessness comes in too, is that I'm never going to get there. I can't do it. And so you feel lost, like you're swimming in a huge ocean. And I think that's what you're trying to say. And I want teens to understand you can overcome it. I want adults, parents, teachers, therapists to realize that it isn't just quote unquote crossing the bridge in one foul swoop. You've got to trust the process, trust your clinician that is an expert in this, hopefully, that can really help guide you to what those steps are. And that's what happened with you. You were able to realize, where am I on the ladder, on the bridge, and work towards it in a way that you felt comfortable and safe. So you're always going to be a bit uncomfortable, right? Like trying, like 0 to 5, let's say, where 5 is the hardest, 0 is the easiest. You can't live life in 0 out of 0 or 0 out of 5. You just can't. You've got everything you want, they say, is what? On the other side of fear. But you've got to respect, you shouldn't feel a 5, maybe a 2 or a 3, right? So you have to push yourself within the realm of your ability to do it. And that's what you did.
Yeah. So there were several times where I would be engaged in exposure therapy and something seemed too big for me. And I would almost feel like I had failed in a way, and that like I wasn't going to ultimately reach that goal that I was hoping for. And there were times where I just wanted to quit and not go forward and press forward. And there were several periods of time where I would stay stagnant of where I was at in my journey and becoming verbal. And I would sort of feel like I was taking a step back, even though I wasn't really. But I think that it's important to realize that in those situations where you feel like you're kind of lost and not really sure like how you can make more progress and, oh, I want to talk to this person or that person or this group of people. Making those smaller steps and those smaller increments is so instrumental. At least it was in my journey. I think that it's so important to realize that in the moment, anxiety is sort of seen as like an arc. And that's something that my therapist also would tell me time and time again, is that like in the moment, or even like after the fact, whatever that looks like, the anxiety is going to gradually rise up, and it's going to probably peak right around the time that you want to start verbalizing with someone. But ultimately, just trust that that anxiety is not going to go past a certain point, and that at the end of the day, you're still going to be you. That anxiety is not going to rule you over, because it ultimately will fall again. And it's sort of like this process of rising and falling. But for me, a big piece of my journey was just realizing that this anxiety, it's not going to last forever. And it was sort of like a journey where I became more and more comfortable with that anxiety being there, and not necessarily trying to like piece that anxiety out of the picture, but sort of like me accepting the fact that the anxiety is going to be with me. And that's not necessarily going to be something I can just throw away, but it was okay to live with that and still press forward with that.
I love how you phrase that too. The way I'm hearing it is that you didn't let anxiety rule you and take over. You became more on top of it and understood it is going to be there to an extent. That's one of the reasons I asked you that original question about, now that you've quote unquote overcome SM. It's not like you're never going to feel anxiety in your life. It's never that you're never going to have, you're not going to have moments in your life where you may feel sad. Of course you will. Life is such that you're going to have the ups and the downs. It's how you journey and the coping skills you have to deal with it in the perspective. And I love the 0 to 5 because it gives individuals a way to break that down. And all of those philosophies can take you in life. Are there any examples you have? And you may not, because I'm asking a question that it's kind of interesting. Like, are there examples of using that philosophy of breaking it down and kind of starting with where you're at and respecting your comfort and feelings for things that you do in school now?
Yeah, in a sense, I feel like throughout the engineering process of taking an ultimate goal that you want to achieve and sort of starting at square one of like, okay, let me brainstorm some crazy ideas about how I can reach this goal. I think that that's can kind of work its way back into that concept of breaking things down into smaller increments, because with the engineering process, you have like brainstorming and ideation and sort of like fabricating your design and like creating whatever you're trying to create. You can break it down into all these little steps to ultimately get to that bigger picture of like the final product. So this past spring, I was involved in a class where it was a group project where my group was tasked with building a bridge that spanned about 5 or 6 feet, and it would collapse into itself. So we pretty much had an entire semester to like create this final product. So I think that definitely allowed me to like break things down into like smaller goals where we kind of took it one step at a time of like, okay, this week we're going to do this, and next week we're going to refine this process and like test it. So at the end of that, of all of that semester, it was just so rewarding to look back and be like, wow, we did this together as a team, and like all these little steps, they really added up to this final product.
Yeah, it's a great example. So you broke it up, and that's what you did with your treatment, and here you are. So overall, my last question to you was, how has life changed? And you pretty much have summed it up, but in your words, how has life changed for you now that you've found your voice?
Yeah, like I said, it's just who I am now. It's part of life. I'm so used to talking to people that when I do come home for breaks and I see people who I'm not verbal with yet, it's almost weird to not talk to them. And I just like feel that urge to like want to talk to them.
So for the individuals that you haven't seen in a while and you're still stuck with, like you haven't overcome SM specifically with them. So you're nonverbal, you're comfortable, you're stuck against the nonverbal wall. Do you have a desire to overcome it with them?
There are some people who I am still working towards like talking to, and there are some people who I definitely do want to become verbal with.
So I have a question for you. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of a therapy session, if it's okay. If you did, now knowing that you are a college student now, how would you want to tell them that you'd like to overcome it with them? Could you write a letter, a text?
What I usually do is reach out to the person over text, and I've done this so many times in the past where I've started talking to people, but I'll reach out to them over text and I'll say something along the lines of, "Hey, I really want to start talking to you, like become verbal with you." And I'll sort of ask them like, "Hey, like would you be willing to like work with me alongside this?" And 100% of the time they're always like, "Yes, of course, like I would love to work on talking to you." I used to do that much more than I do now, because now it's sort of become more efficient, because I can just text someone and be like, "Hey, I'm going to start talking to you when I see you," whether it's me hanging out with them or me just seeing them around wherever. And at that point, the next time I see them, I just start talking to them. So it's sort of become like a shortened process, because what used to happen was I would text the person and then we would kind of work through it, where I would send them voice memos or videos of me talking. And then ultimately that would work up to me meeting up with them in person and playing a game, or just doing a small activity where I would like have a very low intensity level of like saying one word at a time or something like that. And we would sort of like snowball into it, work up to it. But now it's sort of become a much quicker process of, "Hey, would you mind if I just start talking to you?"
So what you're describing is what I tell people all the time. You need to have almost like a path, a ritual that you add the people down on the, like, say the left side. And in your case, it's for you, right? You're not necessarily using the whole RSA anymore, where you're starting with sounds and shaping them into words, which, because what happens is, even for those that use that, you end up cutting out columns. But my point being is, whatever that would be, and I'm happy to just complimentary just to kind of meet with you for 30 minutes. It would, I believe that's all it would take with you. Come up with that path, and then boom, 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 you knock them all out. You just send your text and you go through it ritualistically. It's all about that, knowing what, when, where, and how. And that gives you the control to know what to do. So that's why I asked you if you wanted to, because I would love to be able to meet with you and kind of come up with that path so you can just knock them out, I call it. Because I think you're there. You just need that path. It's like you're kind of stuck right here. And then once you have your path, you'll be able to just keep like you did. So you could do it
Yeah.
if you desire. Like, some people will say, you know what, it's not that important to me. I knew them in the past. It's no big deal. I'm okay. I'm living my life. I really don't interact with them, because that's the speech phobia piece of it, is when I'm speech phobic, and then how to unlearn speech phobia. And that's with that ritualistic process. So whether it sounds or making words and whatever it is, it's a ritualistic process. But you have just accomplished so much in your life. And overcoming SM, in my mind, knowing you and having met you when I did at camp, you have such confidence now, Nick. You project confidence and you project all of that. And so that is just fueling so much more in your life, because you have the confidence in yourself, which opens the world to you, to all that you can do and become.
Yeah. And I 1,000,000% don't take any of that for granted. I wholeheartedly feel like there are so many people around me who have like supported me through everything. You included, my therapists, my family, all my friends, everyone has sort of been alongside me throughout this journey. So I definitely could not have done any of this just by myself. I'm so thankful and I'm so blessed to just have made this progress and be like a living testimony for people who are struggling with what I've struggled with and gone through.
Yeah, your hope. You offer hope. And that's the whole point of this, is that people are hearing this. Parents, hopefully teens, therapists that are hearing this and realize, you know what? You can overcome it. You can reach your capacity and your potential. And it's about the trust in the process. So, Nick, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I've been wanting to meet with you for so long. You're just so darn busy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for just providing me the platform, the opportunity to come on this podcast and just be part of this. I'm so thankful.
You're not just a rock star, you're a super duper rock star. You're like amazing. You really are. You're going to go so far in life. I knew that when I met you. You're just that person that is going to just take life and just go, and nothing is going to really stop you. You have what it takes, and I know you have a lot of faith, and like you said, you have the support, and it takes the support and the belief. And you have all the ingredients to just live your life and become all that you want to become. I know that. And I know in the future, you'll be keeping in touch and letting me know, because I do connect with your mom on Facebook and stuff. And I love to hear all that you're doing. And please just shoot us off messages. I really love to hear how you're doing. It means so much. And it's really super cool because for me, as you grow and you get through college and grad school and you like start living your life in the real world, I love that because I've been doing this so long that I see people like that. And it's like, oh my God, I met them when they were so little, let's say, and now look at them, they're full-fledged adults. And so I know in your own way, you're giving back. Just by doing this, you're giving back. You're helping others realize you can indeed overcome it. And there's so much hope.
Yeah, for sure.
So keep living your best life, Nick. You're an inspiration to millions and millions of people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Unspoken Words, a selective mutism podcast hosted by me, Dr. E, and the Smart Center. This episode and all episodes of Unspoken Words is produced by New Edition Productions. Don't forget to submit any questions you have from today's episode using our Ask Dr. E form on our website. Just head to selectivemutismcenter.org/ask-DRE. I'd love to answer your question in a future episode or blog post. Remember, for the best of this episode and every episode of Unspoken Words, please follow the podcast on Instagram and YouTube. We are at unspokenwords_podcast on Instagram and Unspoken Words by DRE on YouTube. Or join our newsletter for additional SM content. We release new episodes every other Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you next time.